So what I want to talk about right here is the root of prejudice and where prejudice comes from. Why are people prejudiced? Are we born this way? How can we fight prejudice? And what's wrong with prejudice exactly? Well, let's get into that. Now, first and foremost, I want to talk about the title of the blog, which the title of the blog is that it's not color, it's culture that people are prejudiced against. Now, I want to explain to you how this works and how we became victims of stereotypes, all right? So first of all, I want to talk about Hollywood for a minute. Now, why am I bringing up Hollywood? The reason why I'm bringing up Hollywood is because it's a good example of media and how what we see on TV and what we perceive through media, whether it's books or TV or the internet, has a dramatic effect on people. Okay, so if you look in early Hollywood, you're going to see some very, very bizarre things regarding prejudice ideals. Now, I was watching a movie about Genghis Khan the other day, the Asian Mongol leader, war leader Genghis Khan, and it was played by John Wayne. That's right, Pilgrim, that guy. So why would that be an issue? Well, one of the reasons why is because very common sense would be not to do those kind of things. You would normally get a actor that was Asian to play an Asian part. Now, the reason why they did these things in Hollywood is because they were saturated with prejudice. Okay, saturated by prejudice ideals, and there were certain people that actually broke this fear and stereotypes of prejudice and were successful despite having the odds against them. I want to talk a little bit about Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier was a black actor, well known for starring in a lot of blockbuster movies, back in the golden years of Hollywood. But the reason why he was so successful was the way he held himself, was the way he presented himself, and what he presented himself as. Now, Sidney Poitier did not fit into the stereotypes of black people being presented during that era. So, in fact, he broke barriers because he came off as the person he really is, was a very talented, charismatic individual, and he spoke that way. So when he talked clear. When he spoke about things that were, uniting, more moral values and so forth. And what happened was that because he did that, he broke the typical stereotypes of Hollywood, of the Hollywood genre of that time. Now, basically, if Sidney Poitier was talking a bunch of ebonics and talking a bunch of what people would expect a black person to be talking like, he would have not been successful. But he actually showed that black people, just like every other race, could be charismatic, intelligent, smart, and are worthy of your respect. Sidney Poitier is one of the people who did that. He broke stereotypes in Hollywood. You can also see this with Rita Moreno, and you can also see this with Anthony Quinn. Okay? So basically, you're seeing different circumstances where people rise above their typical expectations. All right? And so this is what we're going to get to now again. Let's get to where stereotypes come and why they start to infect our mind. And believe me, they infect our mind. So, as children, are we born prejudiced? Of course we're not. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, if you go to the beach, you'll probably see children playing with all kind of different races of children. Hey, maybe once in a while you'll see a kid say, well, why you got a skin color this way? Or why are your eyes blue? Or whatever. But that's all it is. It's just innocent curiosity. No, there's no hate involved. As a matter of fact, what they do is they invite them in their life and they go and they start playing, building sandcastles together and so forth. This is what children do. They're not prejudiced, and that proves that we are not born prejudiced. As a matter of fact, if you look at Nazi Germany, even with all the propaganda, prejudice propaganda hanging up on every single wall, children were still playing with each other regardless of race or nationality. So that proves that we are not born prejudiced. But are we prejudiced? Well, yes. As adults, every single person on planet Earth is prejudiced to a certain degree. If you say you're not, you're a liar. Because this is a natural thing with human evolution. So what happens is that we start to become prejudiced because we start to fear cultures, not color. And I want you to remember that cultures is what we fear. Cultures are what we hate. And these things are the trigger to what prejudice really is. So when you see a person of color or a person of any color for that matter, it triggers the idea that you have of their culture. So you are actually prejudiced against their culture, not their color. Color is not the basis for prejudice. It is in fact the culture that they represent. But do they really represent that culture? Absolutely not. What's happening with prejudice is that it's based on stereotypes, okay? And this is one of the things that few documentaries ever talk about. People are so entirely sensitive about bringing up any honesty regarding stereotypes that they're terrified of being canceled. But when you can't talk honestly, brutally honestly about things, you can't learn. So here's the thing, okay? Stereotypes stereotypes are the cause of our prejudice. And I'm going to explain how it works. So in every single group, for example, I'll bring three major groups in America: black, Latino, and white. Okay? So out of these three groups, there's some bad apples. And unfortunately, those bad apples can make the rest of their race look horrible. All right? So I'll give you an example. A lot of people will say, well, there's some black crackheads that are a bunch of criminals. Or there's some Latin cholos that are a bunch of gangbangers, weed smokers, and thieves, you know? And then you could say, well, there's a bunch of white people in a trailer park doing meth all the time. And look it, are these things real? To be honest with you, some are, but it's a very small population in each genre. In other words, in each race, they have a very small population of people who do these things. But unfortunately, we think that they are representatives and reflections of their entire race, which is a stupid thing to do. There's plenty of black teachers, plenty of black doctors, plenty of black people that don't speak in crazy Ebonics. There's all kind of Latino people that don't talk like Cheech and Chong. There's all kind of white people in the wherever they live that are not doing meth. Okay? So what I'm trying to tell you is that these are very, very small constituencies of people, and unfortunately, they start to somehow represent entire races. And what people do is they think, oh my God, these horrible people are representing the race that they have been born into. And this is the really root of our prejudice. This is where it comes from. It really is. So how do we combat this? Well, first of all, you got to understand that, this is exactly what it is. It's a stereotype. Prejudice started out through communities in a very bizarre way. When there was no social media, a person would sometimes travel to another a territory of another race, and if they got hurt, I got jumped by a bunch of black guys. Then they go to their community and say, well, I got jumped by a bunch of black guys, and they think that those bad apples are representative of the beautiful people that black people are really encompassed with. The same thing if you go to a Latino neighborhood, you get jumped by a bunch of Latin gangbangers. Don't go thinking that all people of Latin cultures are a bunch of gangbangers or troublemakers. Okay? So common sense would kind of dictate that, but why is it that we're not listening to our common sense? Well, this has to do with media and what media does. So you turn on the news, and what you see is a bunch of bad news. In fact, most of the news being reported is bad. And what do you think they're doing? They're actually glorifying these stereotypes. When they talk about black people, they'll one time maybe bring up one good example of a black person during each, maybe a few broadcasts. But the majority is they're just saying, well, this guy did this, these guys are doing drugs, oh, they're shooting people, but same thing for Latin people. Well, this guy's doing that, blah, blah. You watch the show Cops, they're locking up all kind of white people, saying a bunch of meth heads and all that. It's the media. So basically the media is really focusing on the bad people, those small bad apples that I talked about, and what they're doing is they're empowering those stereotypes, and unfortunately for us, our brains just soak all that in. And so what happens is that we start to develop an affiliation between these horrible people and with the race that they are. And this is very bad because it's not true. It's false. Everybody is basically good. You know what I'm saying? In other words, everybody's basically trying to do good things. We all have the same goals. But what happens is that the media focuses on these very bad stereotypes, and they make them affiliated in our mind with the race that we see them as. So in other words, their color, the color of the person's skin, triggers the hatred that you have from that culture. And what hatred do you have for that culture? You don't really hate people that are black. You don't really hate Asian people. You don't hate Latino people. You don't hate white people. You hate that very, very, very small group of hateful criminals that exist in every single race on earth. The stereotype. So what I'm asking you now is to say, every time that you get these prejudiced feelings in you, purge them. Because every single person on earth has these prejudiced feelings. If they say they don't, they're lying. That's all there's to it. So what we got to do is make sure we don't give in to those things. We got to make sure that we're not the fools for the devil's plot. Okay? In other words, we're not going to be fooled by the image that these stereotypes make. Because those little stereotypes are not representative and reflective of the wonderful races that they were born as. So please keep that in mind.